What is going on, everybody? So, if you haven't seen, I recently watched Insidious The Red Door, which was the fifth installment in the Insidious franchise, and I've seen all of these movies. Some of them I've seen them multiple times, and so I thought it would be fun to release a ranked list of my personal opinion as to where these Insidious films fall in the franchise order. As I've told you guys before, I was a huge fan of the original Insidious when it was released, so when these films came out, I just watched every single one. I really love James Wan. I was a huge fan of Blumhouse when they first started as a production company. Now they don't put out as many movies that I'm like super in love with. They still make some gems every now and again. But I was really excited to watch the fifth movie, and now I thought it'd be fun to rank them. So as always, when I do these rank lists, this is my opinion. My opinion is probably going to be different than yours, but I'm going to give you some of my thoughts as to why these fall in the specific spots. I'm going to rank them from my least favorite to my favorite. And as I said, there are 5 films in this franchise, so we're going to start right now. Coming in last place is going to be Insidious The Last Key, the 4th installment in this franchise. So this is one of the films, 3rd and 4th, that was the Lin Shaye offshoot movies. And don't get me wrong, I think Lin Shaye is an incredibly talented actress. I think that she does a phenomenal job in these movies, but that's all that this has to offer. It is an incredibly boring film. The pacing is absolutely horrendous. With the exception of the first act, which I think is a really good set piece, it leads into virtually nothing. The creature design in this is all right. It's nothing to really write home about. And I feel like with a franchise like Insidious, you create this idea of the further, you try to build on it in one way or another. And this was just like, okay, we can't do anything with the original family from the first 2 films, so we're going to try to do these offshoot movies of someone's experiencing a haunting, and Elise has to go investigate the haunting. And I don't know, there's a lot of this movie that's just incredibly laughable. It's a jump scare laden fest, but the problem is like the jump scares are paced out with just extremely lengthy moments of nothing that doesn't build up to great characters, doesn't really have any interesting plot twist. It's just boring, which is the worst thing an Insidious film could be, or a horror film could be in general. It's just boring. Write great characters, make like really great atmosphere that's unsettling and eerie. That's not to say the pacing has to be rapid fire. You can have slow paced horror films that work really well, like The Witch. But in this case, it's just they didn't know what to do. So it's just really bad pacing that leads up to an ultimately unsatisfying climax. I already forget most of the stuff about this movie. I don't plan on watching it again. Coming in at number 4 is going to be Insidious Chapter 3. This is the first film that they did that was trying to be an offshoot of the original first 2 films. Lin Shaye is taking the helm at this. I love her performance in this movie. Without her, this movie doesn't work at all. This is very much like a possession film because everything about these entities and the further taking over people's bodies, it's really the only direction that they have. The problem is that the lead up to the 3rd act, where it really kind of blows up, is just really kind of your run-of-the-mill, by-the-numbers, possession-esque film. There's nothing really special to this. The performances are all pretty laughable outside of Lin Shaye. I didn't really like any of the new characters that were incorporated. That car scene at the beginning of this one is absolutely hysterical, though, and it catches me off guard every single time. But not in a way that scares me, more just in a way that makes me laugh. And yeah, unfortunately, this one was directed by Leigh Whannell, who has been a part of the franchise for a while, even, I believe, established the characters to the original film, and I'm not sure why this one was so bad, because I feel like with someone like that taking the helm and writing this story, that it could have been something really special. And it's just similar to what I said about the 4th film. It's just paced really poorly, and this is a lot more watchable than The Last Key. There are some moments in it that you can definitely enjoy, and there's some scary moments that I think are relatively effective, but this isn't one I ever look forward to revisiting. It's not one that I plan on revisiting anytime soon. And yeah, honestly, the 3rd and 4th installments, they don't really add anything to the original 2 films or The Red Door. So if you wanted to skip over these, you could, and you wouldn't really be missing out on all that much. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Insidious Chapter 2. So I actually just revisited this one the other night because, funny enough, 3, 4, and 1 I've all revisited in the past few years, but part 2 I hadn't seen since the theater. So this was the first time that I'd revisited this one since the theater, and it was not as good as I remember, unfortunately. The pacing in it is not really all that great, which is shocking because James Wan directed this one, and with how, in your face, anxiety inducing, the amount of great tension that's built up in the original Insidious, this just lacks most of that. I do like the story of the woman in the black wedding dress. I think that they do a really cool job incorporating that story. It's really fascinating. It adds a nice little twist into the story. She has some moments that are incredibly terrifying. There are some really great scare moments, but there are also a lot more cheap jump scares than the original Insidious. And that's something that I'm not all about. I don't really like just cheap jump scares in your face because a loud noise is going to scare anyone. What's really great is build up tension when you see something and you're required to stare at it for a long period of time, and it makes you unsettled and terrifying, which the original Insidious, on top of their jump scares, has a lot of that. And I do love the family in this. I think that Patrick Wilson and Rose Byrne both give great performances. All the actors that play their children do a good job. And I think, it's easy to be invested in this world, which is what makes Insidious Chapter 2 watchable. The problem is it's just nothing more than watchable, unfortunately. It had the potential to piggyback off the original film in a way that could be really effective, really scary, really well done, and it just ends up being relatively mediocre, which is unfortunate because I wanted a lot more out of this. Coming in at number 2, believe it or not, is going to be the newest Insidious, Insidious 5, The Red Door. I really enjoyed this movie. I think as far as this family and building on these characters, this is the best they could do outside of the original Insidious, and I think a lot of that has to do with Patrick Wilson being at the directorial helm. He clearly cares about these characters. He gives them a really good arc, especially the father and son, which has been the crux of the entirety of the first 2 films, and what holds this franchise together is that relationship. And I think the way that he explores it is really great. I think this whole idea of overcoming trauma, putting your trauma into something else, trying to create art out of it, trying to find an outlet so that it doesn't control you, is a really great message that surprised me that could resound in a 5th installment in a film. And it's not as high octane as the first Insidious, but I think that it's pretty well paced and it does a good job executing in the way that it wants to. And overall, I had a really enjoyable experience watching this movie, and I look forward to watching it again soon. And coming in at number 1 as a surprise to absolutely no one is James Wan's original Insidious. There was no way that anything was going to knock this one out because this movie is what started it all. I absolutely adore the original Insidious. I think it does a perfect job building up tension, writing great characters, keeping you on the edge of your seat, mixing in jump scares with legitimate spine-tingling horror where you're seeing things on screen that just really make you uncomfortable. This introduction of the further, which plays in subtly in each other film. The further in this is really fantastic, and the first time you're introduced to it, it's such a unique world going into this black void with just smoke where you have replicas of the houses and they're going in there and they see these entities. The scene with that family on the couch in the original Insidious is still one of the most unsettling images in any film that I've ever watched, and it still kind of makes my skin crawl when I think about it. Something about them just sitting perfectly still and you knowing that they're going to do something is really just something that makes my skin crawl. And I absolutely love this movie every time I revisit it. I think it's so well executed. I think it's paced really well. I think James Wan did a phenomenal job with it. The Joseph Bashara score in this is fantastic. I love the heavy string violins in it, just how manic and intense and anxiety inducing they are. It just really contributes to what you're seeing on screen. And this, to me, is a modern day horror classic that I think people will watch for years and years to come and still be terrified by it. The red-faced demon in this is great. The introduction into the woman in the black dress. I just think that all of that lore elements that do come into play later in the franchise are established so well. And it's a movie that I try to revisit at least once a year, especially around Halloween, because it is fantastic. So that's my ranking ranking of the Insidious franchise? Do you agree or disagree with it? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know what you would rank these films if you've seen The Red Door already, or even if you haven't seen The Red Door, what your ranking of this franchise looks like. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.